It's laughable. It's clearly laughable. No one believes that.
Earlier, we were talking about operationalizing the effort, the calling to move from potential chaos to order. It starts with organizing one's physical space. If we were to, extend the rings of the bullseye out a little bit further, for people listening who are trying to figure out, like, where do they receive that calling? How do they find their calling? So responsibility and adventure being perhaps the compass through which we can, navigate there. So they think, like, well, where can they grab a hold of their responsibility and then, as a consequence of doing that, engage in adventure and have an impact that is good for them and good for the world? How do they find that?
I think there's very practical answers to those questions. So two of the highest order characterizations of the divine in the biblical library is calling and conscience. And you could think about those as integrated manifestations of positive and negative emotion. So imagine there's a pathway forward to your aim, okay? Your negative emotion tells you when you deviate from the pathway, and your positive emotion tells you when you're progressing along the pathway. Okay, now imagine that there's a voice of your integrated positive emotion, and there's a voice of your integrated negative emotion. Calling, that's what fills you with enthusiasm. And the root word of that is theos, right? Deos, that's God. Calling, conscience. Okay, so now that beckons you forward. So how do you find that? Some things bother you. Those are your problems. And you might think, I don't want to have any problems. It's like, no, you've got some problems. You can tell that because those things bug you. That's your conscience calling you to your destiny, those problems, okay? Calling. There's some things that interest you, right? And you don't get to pick them exactly. They just sort of make themselves manifest, like the burning bush did to Moses, because that's an example. That's the symbolic representation of calling. It's the dynamism between calling and conscience that orients people upwards, right? That's the pillar of flame and the pillar of darkness that guides the Israelites across the desert when they're lost. Calling beckons. Conscience provides disciplinary limitations. That's a good way of thinking about it. So you can see that. Some things are good. You ask yourself, what bothers me about me?